It appears that the U.S. Army might have amnesia. As you guys might have remembered, only a few weeks ago, to join the U.S. Army, it didn't even require you to graduate high school. But apparently this top general is now saying that's not what they would ever do. They're never going to lower their standards, and that's what they're fighting against, as he kind of dives into why this might be. We have a double dose video today, so if you're not really feeling the first story, I'm going to time mark the second one, but I promise you the first one's good, but it's a double dose video. Stay for the whole thing. Military.com shows Army's top general vows not to lower recruiting standards despite trouble finding new soldiers. You've piqued my interest because recruiting has been at an all-time low over the past year, and you guys have been talking about that for so many years, so I don't know what you're going to do to try and ensure that people come in. This journal says, what I don't want to do, and what we've done this historically, is lower standards and convince ourselves that's the right thing to do, General James McConville said. The Army's Chief of Staff told reporters Thursday, we're not going to achieve squat. I do also want to remind you guys that I believe it was 2017, around that time frame, where our guy Art Chisel also covered this when he was mentioning that the ASVAB score was now lowered from, I think it was 31 to a 21, and then that raised a lot of concerns or issues, and so essentially the Army changed it. That general continues to say, we are taking a look at every single position in the Army. We've done the analysis and we found out that there's positions that we don't necessarily require, but our intent is not to reduce any brigade combat teams at the same time. The service has been making minor adjustments on the margins that Army planners hope will make recruiting slightly easier, such as more relaxed tattoo policies. I do agree with that. Generous enlistment bonuses up to $50,000, which I wish I could get. It says, and allowing new recruits to pick their first duty station with limitations, but none of those efforts are expected to radically change the trend line. I guess you could say you fix manning by making the number of total men required smaller and saying that they're not required, and that would make the numbers look a little bit better. But let's talk about the true test of these troops that are going to be in combat. Can we say that those cut down on troops is actually going to have an impact on the effectiveness on the battlefield? McConnell told reporters that academic side of recruiting process is equally grim, with applicants struggling to pass the Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, ASVAB for short, an SAT style quiz in the past. McConville said the pass rate was about 2/3 of applicants, but that has fallen to about 1/3 in recent years, and says in quotations, we've had a valedictorian that couldn't pass the ASVAB. We just haven't seen those types of things before, he said. This is where I question how true or how accurate is ASVAB in testing the ability at which someone is capable of problem solving? Are we seeing that this common core math that's out there affect the outcome of what we're seeing people join the military and what they're able to do? I think you might see some conflict there. I don't know if the ASVAB test has changed over time, or if they've looked at, the way that we're actually quizzing people, if it's applicable to, their types of learning that they've had in school, and then how that translates to this test right here. And this general here is saying that quality is more important than quantity, which is kind of interesting because the Army is the biggest branch out there, has the most funding, and you're looking at, is throwing money at the problem going to fix it to allow these people that are the smartest valedictorians to try and come into the military, especially as we're looking at critical fields like cyber warfare and things like that we're obviously looking for in-demand skills, and it's no secret. Is that the right answer? Let me know down in the comments below, because we do have another subject, like I said in the beginning of this video, that we're going to cover. Former Navy petty officer used Facebook to rope troops and vets into $335,000 scam, the feds say. The SEC says he blew the money on GameStop stocks and gambling. And according to this Task and Purpose article, it's that chief you just saw there. Navy Chief, Navy Pride. Are we seeing some issues as far as who's getting selected and who isn't? Yeah, I don't think anybody can tell that somebody would go down to this realm, especially a veteran status that has stood the watch, as they like to say, during the retirement ceremonies. But as we look at this, the story gets crazier, as it seems like an unfolding of 2020, 2021 has kind of hit its mark with the U.S. Navy. A retired Navy chief petty officer has been charged with multiple counts of fraud by the SEC after he allegedly raised almost $355,000 for an investment fund that targeted other veterans and service members, but instead spent half of that money on gambling and personal expenses. I bet you he went to Navy Exchange. I bet you he bought a PS5. He bought a new TV on sale. We're talking about football seasons coming up. This guy had his priorities in order, guys. Let's be real. I'm kidding, obviously. It says Murray, who retired from the Navy as a chief hospital corpsman in 2018, started Deep Dive Strategies LLC, or DDS, in September 2020. Murray used social media to post about his purported success on trading options contracts during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to SEC. Murray would also stream his supposed trading activity on social media platform Discord and touted his investment success in a Facebook group popular with thousands of current and former Navy service members called the GOATS Facebook group. Over the next 6 months, Murray used the veneer of trustworthiness created by his U.S. Navy service to raise nearly $355,000 from approximately 44 investors. That's a lot of money for that little of investors, most of whom were affiliated with the Navy either as active duty service members, reservists, or veterans, according to the SEC. For people that are other branches out there, I have to let you guys know that the Chiefs mess is kind of like a frat. It is the best way to describe it. Most other branches don't have something like the Chiefs mess to explain or compare to, and it's essentially like a brotherhood of the military within a brotherhood of that brotherhood. And so it is like Navy Chief, Navy Pride. That's what they're about. And really, you wouldn't think that a fellow chief would do this to you. Somebody that obviously had some credibility, someone that came from the hospital corpsman community at that, which he may have been one of those ship-going types that it does take a lot more responsibility to serve upon. So that makes a lot of questions from this, but it looks like the SEC has investigated and has actually gone even further into this and what he put this money into. It says, unfortunately, while Murray told his investors that the fund would invest in publicly traded securities, he almost immediately began spending much of the money on himself. That included using the fund's debit card for $630 purchase of Hellsberg diamonds on October 2020, 3 days after DDS received its first funds. All told, the investigators say Murray misappropriated roughly $148,000 from the fund, including $8,700 in debit card expenses and checks, $83,500 in cash withdrawals, and $58,000 that was transferred into his own personal account. And it looks like Murray took a lot of this cash to go to the Midwest and look at some of these casinos to do his fair share of gambling, which are not publicly traded securities by any means. Finally, it says what money Murray did invest, he did so quite poorly. The fund was nearly broke after January 13th, 2021, when Murray lost a significant amount of GameStop options contracts, according to the SEC. Murray's last trade was made 10 days later. SEC documents describe it as risky, and it left the fund with a value of $161.98, which Murray withdrew. Man, didn't even leave a cent. It says here that Murray had told investors they could withdraw their money at the end of 2021, but cut off contact with them in March of that year. He reportedly announced he was willing to shut down the fund in August 21 and allow investors to redeem their money, but never did so. You mean this guy actually thought he could sell GameStop option contracts and make a living off of this? Just to give some context here, on a basic Google search of the 5 years, you look at up into the pandemic, they were almost done with. And then they shot up and you saw this high volatility as it's continued to kind of trend downwards over the past 2 years. But looking at that, you're like, it's not like this chief had any more idea of how GameStop was going to trade than anybody else. So this was literally a shot in the dark. And I would say that, this is no secret to what has happened in the military. We've seen where multi-level marketing has infiltrated the military and people trust others and expand their network wherever they're at, or expand what they're trying to do here and exploit this. So if you are active duty, if you are a veteran, reservist, a freaking anything related to the military, I would say do not get involved with anything where you're giving money to anybody else unless it's for lunch or some kind of basic essential such as snacks, gas, whatever it might be. We're taught in boot camp and basic training that we should trust the person to our left or right, that we should trust this person that we go to combat with. But reality, we can't even trust them with $5 in the back pocket of ours. Have there been any other types of debacles like this that you guys have seen that people have been caught up with? And I just have to say your financial, advice should be stuck with people with true financial experience. But that is enough to say here, and there are resources out there if you need to see those or talk to someone about those. But as always, I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Hit me up in the comments down below or on Instagram, TikTok. We've been making TikToks, or also on Snapchat, Twitter, all that fun stuff. I promise you guys, if you guys see other videos or other ideas you want me to cover, let me know over at those places. It will really help out here. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.